Has Israel officially received at least some of the hostages? And have they announced just how long the fighting will continue after the ceasefire ends? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. This is your unbiased Israel-Hamas update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, I want to point out in the control map that we haven't looked at in a while, Israeli forces moving very slowly through this Beit Hanun, a dense urban area that's been kind of a hotbed of Hamas resistance. They've also, of course, seen them move much more quickly through some of these somewhat more open areas here. You can see high-density urban areas. Well, they're just tough for the Israeli tanks to operate, as we've seen from a lot of these videos. So while they have effectively surrounded the northern part of Gaza, you notice that a lot of this territory is fairly low density. The only place where we've seen really dense fighting is through this center area of northern Gaza. And the progress has been pretty brisk, right? But there's, of course, some noteworthy issues. First, you see the Israeli forces pushing deep towards central Gaza here. And for the time being, though, for the next 4 days at least, you're going to see no movement at all. And you can see here where there was dozens and dozens of icons denoting fighting, there's almost none. And the reason is simple, actually. It's because of the 4-day truce that both sides have signed. And Israel has reportedly received at least some of the hostages. And these hostages are predominantly women and children, which itself is kind of messed up, to even take, again, women, older women, children, people with illnesses, taking them as hostages is pretty, it's a war crime. It's a war crime and it's terrorism. Like call it what it is, This doesn't mean everything that Israel has done is justified, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that Hamas are saints, right? But the important thing is the most vulnerable have agreed to have been released by Hamas. This is, of course, in exchange for, I think the number was like 150 Palestinian prisoners. There's also aid being brought into Gaza, right? But they've confirmed that at least the first wave. And what's going to happen over the next 4 days is that there's going to be waves of hostages released, as the ceasefire continues, right? This is to ensure that both sides maintain their bargain, their end of the bargain, through the 4 days, right? So the final set of hostages will likely be released probably midnight on day 4. Once they're received, probably the fighting will resume. Now, guys, if you're like me over the holidays, you've got some family commitments, and that means you're going to have to deal with, your uncle or your cousin, give you their hot takes on the conflict. And I'm sure it's going to be a great time, but you're going to need some energy to focus and maintain your patience through that. That's why I invented Strike Gum, right? Veteran-owned company. Ooh, particularly me, I'm the veteran. But this is an energy gum. It's made in the USA with 90 milligrams of caffeine in each individual piece. That's as much as a Red Bull, as much as an Amp Energy. But unlike these energy drinks, this has 0 sugar, 15 calories per piece. And best of all, 50% of the profits from this first production run, I'm donating to charities that support Ukrainian civilians who've been injured or displaced in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. If you're interested, especially, we have a Black Friday sale going on. So go to strikegum.com and you can use promo code Black Friday. Check the description or the pinned comment. And that's going to give you a 25% off 20% off your order up over $70. So a great deal, especially if you're someone who is looking at the tray. That's the equivalent of 75 energy drinks, right? 75 pieces of gum works out to just like 90 cents a gum instead of the 90 cents a piece instead of the $4 or $5 that an energy drink costs now. It's crazy. Anyway, check us out, strikegum.com. Okay, here's 2 other facts that I thought were really interesting. The first is the Egyptian president, right, who's been an absolutely essential broker in kind of these negotiations, right? They're one of the guarantors of Hamas's agreement for this ceasefire, but also they've been just an essential partner for the U.S. to negotiate this sort of really negotiate for both sides to try to advocate for humanitarian assistance to Palestinians. And the Egyptian president says we call for the establishment of an independent Palestinian state, even if it's demilitarized, which is a new stance that we have not heard before, right? This isn't a proposal, but it's a proposal to make a proposal, to say, hey, we're Egypt, we're pretty central to the Hamas governance experiment, right? Because we're the only other country that borders the Gaza Strip, and we're saying that would you accept a demilitarized Palestinian state with guaranteed borders? Now, of course, that would be something they would support because Egypt has had a lot of problems with Palestinian militants internal to their own country, like the Muslim Brotherhood. So the idea that they would get not just a resolution to the Palestinian question, but also the advantage of defanging one of their most troublesome rival groups on their border is like a win-win for them. But here's what I thought was even more interesting. According to a statement from the Israeli defense minister, the army will resume its, quote, intensive fighting in Gaza for at least 2 months immediately after the end of the truce. So while some people may have hoped there would be some sort of larger, more permanent ceasefire that this one kind of parlays into, doesn't look like that is going to be the case, right? The Israeli army and Hamas, frankly, let's be honest here, are both refitting, re-equipping their troops, redeploying their forces, and re-strategizing new ways to engage with the enemy. They're both taking lessons learned. They're both improving their logistics. They're improving their tactics. And in 4 days, they're going to get back at each other with renewed vigor and much more refined tactics. So anyway, that's all I had, guys. Just a quick update. Again, good news, right? Civilians being returned, civilians getting out of the fight. Nobody on either side wants to see civilians harmed. I hope. If you want to see civilians harmed in this conflict, you're a dirtbag. I don't know what to tell you. Thanks to our Colonel tier members at CombatVetNews.com. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members and all the members of Combat Vet News. I really couldn't do this without you guys. As you guys know, sponsors don't really want to touch this at all. So I appreciate you guys. Hit like and subscribe. Tell the YouTube algorithm that I make good content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.